Hey guys, this is Froglet. We're here doing a very different video about how not to build a PC. This guy does not know a damn thing he's talking about. He's a complete idiot. Now, they've already deleted this video from the Verge's YouTube page, but it's being reposted, but even those are getting deleted. So this is like the second or third repost video that I've found, so I can at least do my take on the commentary on this video. I've seen this several times already, so I kind of know ahead of time what's going on. He claims he builds a $2,000 PC, but really he didn't. At best, he spent $1,700, and he didn't pay for it anyway, so saying that is kind of misleading. Well, let's just get started here.
So a few years ago, TC, our managing editor, built...
Now remember, he said a few years ago.
A gaming desktop, but it's kind of out of date, and it's definitely not going to hold up for Battlefield 5.
Bullshit! My computer's older than that, and it plays Battlefield 5. It plays the Battlefield 5 demo. It plays the Black Ops Blackout demo just fine. It plays all that shit fine. Of course, then again, you're not being very specific to exactly what's in his computer.
So let's build a new one.
I would love to build a new machine, but
you
I
can
can't
build
afford
a
it.
gaming desktop for around $1,000, but
Yeah.
I want to go all out, so I spent around $2,000.
You spent around $2,000. Really, you spent around $2,000. The thing is, I know for a fact, and you'll see it later in the video, that his CPU that he's using is a confidential CPU. That means that is an engineering sample that Intel gave The Verge for free for testing and for all that. They didn't spend it. And that cost, these CPUs cost, assuming it's an 8700K, it's going to cost them roughly $360, you know, before taxes and shipping and all that.
PC like this is going to be able to play most games.
Most games, really? That was a GTX 1080. It's going to play all games in Ultra.
At ultra settings. So, what do you need to build a desktop? Well, of course, first you need a table.
You build it on the floor. You can and you can build it on a metal desk, especially because you're not going to power it on there anyway.
Preferably not metal. If it's going to be metal, have an anti-static working surface.
Even a metal desk or table will have some kind of paint coating over it. Whatever.
Layered on top of it, a thermal paste applicator.
That you never use.
An Allen wrench.
That you never use.
Some tweezers to tighten up the wire.
Those are zip ties, you idiot.
There's a Swiss Army knife, which hopefully has a Phillips head screwdriver in it.
If you're spending supposedly, hypothetically, $2,000 on a new PC, you couldn't get a frickin' screwdriver that's like $5. Really. And throughout the entire building where you work, you couldn't just go down to where the janitor works and get a screwdriver, or to maybe your IT department. Hell, if you even spoke to your IT department before you made this video, you'd know you were full of shit.
And last but not least, an anti-static bracelet.
That is not an anti-static bracelet. That is one of those little tchotchke gotcha silicone bracelets that you get because you're fighting for some bullshit cause that doesn't do anything. It's not, because they do make, there are some companies that make so-called wireless anti-static strips, which actually have, they're blue, like real ones are. They're blue, they're made of fabric, but it has a piece of metal in it and a resistor. But again, it's not connected to anything. You have to ground it to be properly grounded from ESD.
Which is to protect you and the parts.
For you? Have you ever been shocked by ESD at all? It doesn't hurt you. The voltage is extremely high. It can be like hundreds of thousands of volts, but it's the current that can kill you. But no one's ever died from static discharge. Sorry.
These are the parts you're going to need, but more importantly...
Well, you can't fry a PC with static. I've done it, but it's very rare.
Before we get there, we need to understand what these parts are doing and how they interact with one another. To better understand the parts that make up a desktop,
Okay, this part is just...
The processor
He's just narrating something he's already done, so let's skip through this bullshit. He's kind of right, kind of wrong, but it doesn't really matter, because when if you're spending $2,000, you're going to build the same machine with the same hardware anyway.
With one another, which also makes it kind of like a nervous system. Need help choosing the right parts for your build.
And you never used PC Part Picker, did you?
Sites like PCPartPicker.com that help show presets for which parts fit together, which sort of part conflicts you might have, and
which you didn't check.
And where to find deals on new parts.
This is PC Part Picker. This is what they did. This is everything I could figure out what they built. And they only spent less, just under $1,800. And since their CPU was free, you can drop that price down by a considerable amount. By, well, it would end up being $1,200.
We have a lot of boxes and a lot of PC parts, so it's best you unbox.
So he's got all
isolate
kinds
the
of
parts
stuff
that you
here.
really need, place items into the case, and make sure that
That is backwards.
they all fit, and then start working. And now we're really going to start building.
So he's telling you to put the parts in, then take them out, and then build this machine. Huh?
By adding the motherboard in. Some notes about installing motherboards: they're really delicate, you should be really careful with them. And screw in with confidence, but also don't screw in too hard, otherwise you could crack the board.
I've never cracked a board screwing too hard. You're likely to break the screw and not the motherboard at all. You'll either break the screw, you'll break off the standoff that's in the case. You know, these will snap off, and then the rest of the screw will still be in the case. Or in the standoff, which is really annoying. But breaking a motherboard? No, that won't happen. It'll break first before that.
I chose Asus's Z370 motherboard for two main reasons. One, it has built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and also it has support for NVMe SSDs, meaning
All modern motherboards have SSDs for NVMe motherboards, M.2 drives, but Wi-Fi? Gamers use Ethernet. Sorry, get better ping times on Ethernet. Wi-Fi has too much latency for gaming. For any kind of competitive gaming. I don't mean like pro gaming, but just anything.
you can get really fast SSDs that are really easy to install. Pay close attention to the brace that goes at the back of the computer. You always
That's the I.O. shield, you moron.
have to make sure that you really hammer it in,
It doesn't brace anything.
because there's no screw, it really just has to go outside of the case
Did it from the inside, not the outside.
and clasp onto the frame. And this is very important because otherwise you can't align the motherboard correctly.
Bullshit. You don't really need the I.O. shield. It's just there if you're not going to be, if you're not constantly building PCs and swapping parts out of a case. Usually it's best not to have an I.O. shield if you're constantly swapping motherboards and everything. If it's going to be a long-term use, then yeah, you should put it in there just so there's slightly better airflow. It doesn't really matter, and dust and everything. But you don't need it to line up the motherboard on the standoffs. You just eyeball the standoffs.
With the holes. We're just going to start installing all 8 screws.
Why are you installing the motherboard now? You have not installed RAM or He's using the wrong screws. Look, that is the completely wrong screw. What the hell? And he actually is using that Swiss Army knife.
So next we're going to install the RAM on the motherboard. I chose Corsair's 16GB
2 sticks.
Vengeance LED RAM for two main reasons. One, it has LEDs and we do like lights on
Whoopie-doo.
gaming desktops. Secondly, it's pretty fast RAM. It's 2660 hits.
That is not pretty fast. It's actually probably one of the slowest RAMs. RAM speeds go up to about 4,000 or so. Average is about 3,000 to 3,200. If I'm going to build a machine, I'll probably be doing something like that for DDR4. But no, that is not pretty fast RAM. That's pretty mediocre, if not slow.
6 megahertz, I believe. So it's
And if you're on an AMD system, this would be really slow and crippling the system.
pretty fast, and this motherboard supports that speed, which is most important.
Of course it supports the speed. It's slow. It's like average basic speed.
Open the slots first. and
Uh-huh,
just
so why are you
aligning
opening all 4 of them when you only have 2 sticks, you retard?
the stick with the middle of the strip, not with the end.
With the... What does he mean by strip? He doesn't know what words he's using. He's just making up shit. He says, I'm assuming he's telling you not to go to one end, but look, he's doing it crooked. He's doing it from this end and then sliding that in. It doesn't matter. How you want to line it up is with the notch, which you can just barely see right here.
And just lining that up with the logo.
Logo? What logo? You talking about the sticker on the side? That doesn't mean anything. You want to line it up with the notch.
So once you hear that solid clasp and you don't see the gold
It's a
connectors
click,
on the
not a
side
clasp.
anymore, that's when you know the RAM is in. Step 3, we're going to install the hard drive.
That's not a hard drive. It's an NVMe SSD. M.2.
Or in this case, the NVMe SSD.
Oh, so you do know what it is.
chose this format of solid-state drive so that I could input it into the motherboard without having to worry about extra wires or putting it in a separate part of the case and just getting really messy.
Really? You're worried about the whole case being messy, then what about this? This is the end result of the system. There's the M.2 right there. Look at that. Pretty good. I mean, but look at this rat's nest here. What the hell are you thinking? Why are you so worried about cable management, about the hard drive, or the SSD, or whatever you're using, when you got all this shit going on? The way this case is built there's a whole another section on the other side of this case. Most cases have the PSU in the bottom here, down here, which makes it a little bit harder for cable management, but you should be able to pull all these cables other than the water hoses away. And look at this. Look at the 8-pin connector, power connector should be coming from behind, not over the front of it.
This is from Kingston, and it's 480 gigabytes, so it's not a lot, but you can always up.
It's good. It's bigger than my SSD, but it's fine. Though you're limited in the number of games you can install on the SSD. You should have a regular mechanical hard drive that's 2 terabytes or more for all your other crap, because you're going to need the room anyway.
Upgrade this and swap it out, and it's only held down by one screw and the latch, so it's really simple.
Look, you didn't even
really
put it in. Well,
straightforward.
he put it in
So
right, but not
so
really.
it's not
Like
a
he's
lot, but you can
plops
always
it in,
upgrade
plop,
this and
shouldn't
swap
lay
it
on the
out.
ground. There should be a little standoff that sticks up, and
It's only held down by one screw and the latch.
okay, there,
so
that's
it's
right.
Really simple.
But I still don't see the standoff. It should be this one. It looks flat. It looks like he just screws it in straight.
And really straightforward.
Into the
Speed for
motherboard
gaming
rather than into the
is
standoff.
important when it comes to a hard drive. You want files to write quickly, and you want
That's
games to
so
load
wrong.
quickly. So that's why it's best if you use an SSD.
Let me see. Can you tell if the standoff's there? It looks like it's just a bare screw in there. It doesn't look like it's in a standoff. Oh my god.
Okay, so step 4, we're going to install the graphics card. I chose PNY's GTX 1080, which is overclocked, and
Pretty mediocre card for the 10 series. Seriously, it's not a 1070, it's not a 1070 Ti, but you know, the 2000 series is coming out pretty soon, so whatever. This is oh, wrong button. That is a $550 card, which I would love this. I wouldn't mind having this video card. I wouldn't pick PNY. I have zero experience with PNY other than maybe some RAM I had one time, but...
And so it's a pretty easy installation. You're just going to find the gold connectors, and you're going to line this bracket with the back end bracket of your PC
You have a thing about brackets and braces, don't you? Did you have braces as a kid?
case. Now, which lane you choose depends entirely on what other parts you're going to put in the system.
Lanes? You mean the slots? You know, it looks like he did some really half-assed research when he's talking about lanes, because you know he might be referring to PCIe lanes. But chances are, you're building a gaming PC. The only card you're going to be installing is just the video card, so that is not an issue of conflict at all. Even if you're doing 2 video cards, the motherboard he has is a so-called gaming motherboard, so it's going to support SLI and Crossfire, so it doesn't matter.
I'm just going to pick the top one because the SSD is at the bottom and I don't want to cover it. I just think it looks nice.
Really? It looks nice? Yet you got a video card that doesn't have a backplate. And still, he hasn't installed this CPU yet. Why would you install all this other stuff that gets in the way from installing a CPU? Never install the CPU last. In fact, I build PCs out of the case, CPU, cooler, RAM, and the video card outside of the case, sitting on top of the box that the motherboard came in, just to see if it'll post. And then I'll put it into the case.
Click down. Take your remaining brackets and just put them in the
This is
spots
brackets.
that you haven't used. You don't have to screw these in. They get bolted down by the back end bracket. And your GPU's
And bed.
installed. Power supply time. I chose Corsair's 850 watt power supply because I need enough headroom for ray tracing GPUs when they come out, and I don't want to have to upgrade it again. So all you
really don't need to. You just get along with the 750 or even a 500 because you don't have that much hardware in that machine. Maybe if you had more hard drives, perhaps, or more video cards. Really, the only thing that's really going to suck power is just the CPU and the video card, and that's it.
have to do is take the brick and make sure that you
The
align
brick.
it with
Don't use the word brick, because that implies it's something that's broken.
these little insulating pads so the power supply doesn't short circuit and come into contact.
Those aren't insulating pads. That's sound dampening for the vibrations coming from the fan on the GPU of the power supply, PSU. You want it to touch the case. You want it to be grounded with the case, so it's a neutral position electrically. It's not going to short out, you idiot.
With the rest of the system. So just take it in.
I guess you just saw those rubber pads and just, oh, it must be insulation for electricity. But you're going to screw it in the back and connect them physically, electrically.
Slide it in nice and easy.
And he puts it in
until
backwards.
You have a snug fit, and then shift it to the back.
This
and make
case,
sure it's right up
the side panel actually has a vent for the fan right where his hand is.
against the frame. Now you just take the required screws and you tighten and screw in.
Are you using the right screws?
So next step,
Doesn't
we're
really
going to
look like he
install the
is.
CPU cooler. In this case, it's going to go on the top end of the case, and we're just going to
Of course, your power supplies come with proper screws, and so does the case itself. So he's using everything. He's using like 3 Corsair parts, and he's not using what came with it.
have the
Or the wrong
hose
ones.
hang out for a little while until we install the processor, which is going to come a little later. Always be sure to try
A little later, you should do that first.
to place it in the system first.
Now he's installing this before the CPU. What the fuck? And look, he doesn't even have the plastic cover that goes over this, because I know there's thermal paste on it. Yeah, it's right here. Why did you take it off in the first place? You haven't even installed it yet. It's gonna get all mucked up, it's gonna smear everywhere.
Before you install it, because you can see it takes up a lot of space. But in this
No.
case, no pun intended.
supposed to put
it
fans
fits
on
in
it too, you know.
perfectly, and we're gonna start screwing it in. And so there's nothing special about this screwing in process. They're
And you think it's nothing special because you're doing it wrong.
just really long screws because they
They're long because you're supposed to have fans with it.
go through the entire frame of the cooler, and
Oh,
they take
you're stupid.
forever.
Stupid, stupid, stupid.
So next up, cables. Every power supply is going to come with a big bag of Velcro cables. It's
Velcro cables. No. Every power supply is not modular, so they're not going to come with a big bag of cables like that. Stupid.
kind of daunting at first, so you always have to find the ones that are going to fit. In this case, you need to match those cables with the correct descriptions on the power supply. Next step is we're connecting the power supply to the motherboard with a 24-pin cable. We're just matching that cable from the motherboard, threading it through the back, and attaching the 24-pin header to the power supply so that we can have one of the connections complete. The next few additions will be for the GPU, for any specific ports that the case has, for any lighting that the case has, the CPU cooler, anything else really. We're installing...
See? It's really blurry, but that's a confidential. That means that is a engineering sample that they got for free. So I could literally... Oop, wrong one. I could literally remove the CPU from this price. Boop. Come on. And it drops the price down to about $1,400. So much for that $2,000 rig you were building.
The CPU, the heart of the computer or the brain, depending on how you look at it. So
Not
to
the
do
heart.
this, we're just going to remove the plastic covering that they put on the motherboard.
It's the plastic cover that they put over the socket. There's a reason why it's there.
I'm just going to take this little plastic part out. We'll just toss that out of here.
You don't want to throw it away. See, this is why I think this is a troll video. Because he's deliberately looking at the camera, looking at us, and throwing it over his shoulder. Because he knows how important, or he should know that's how important it is.
And
You can even hear it go tink tink on the floor. It went tink 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 tink.
And now we have an exposed CPU holder, or rather
Holder. And he's proud about his exposed socket. Oh boy.
slot on the motherboard.
Socket. It's not a slot. This isn't Pentium 2 days, you moron.
And we're going to use the CPU applicator. This is a special little part. that
CPU
not everyone
applicator?
may-
Why is he using the thermal paste spreader on the back of the CPU? What is he doing? Is he trying to knock off the SMDs on the back of the chip or what? Are they misaligned somehow? What are you doing here?
I get, but this motherboard that
Maybe someone put thermal grease in the back of the chip, and he's trying to pick it off or something.
we got from ASUS definitely does have. It's called a CPU installation.
I don't know. I have an ASUS motherboard. It didn't come with one of those. I have no idea what that is. That looks like the cover he just pulled off the motherboard and threw over his shoulder, and it broke, and that's what's left.
Tool. It makes it really useful if you want to install a Core i7 hexa-core CPU.
No, has nothing to do with it being a hexa-core CPU. That form factor has been around for almost 20 years. The 1151 socket, there's been the 1150, 1152, 1149. They're all the same size. The socket's been the same, with just a few differences in pins. But it's the same. That's why there are so many coolers out there that are compatible with several generations in the past.
Yeah, we've got one, and it's an 8th generation chip, and it's ready to go, and it supports overclocking. So
it's a K model, but it could be a 5500.
What having this little installer does for you is it's basically a brace that you can...
What's this with braces? It doesn't brace anything. If you install that with that in there on the motherboard and the socket, it's going to be in the way, and you might break the bracket that actually goes over the CPU.
And apply right to the CPU,
and those get so hot that plastic would probably melt on it.
Light it up with the triangles that you'll see on the bottom.
There's triangles on the socket to line it up with.
Left corners. And this will make it easier for us to apply it to the motherboard and then apply it.
Makes it more, to me, it would make it way more difficult to install it.
Thermal paste and then apply it.
Because it's just going to fall out.
And we're just going to carefully lean it down into the system and make sure that everything lines up.
See, it's not even there because he took it out. Because he realized he didn't fucking need it, you idiot.
So we're about to apply thermal paste to the CPU.
You already have some. You don't need it.
Every CPU cooler actually comes with a bit
Surprised it wasn't all smudged up because you took the cover off.
of thermal paste already neatly applied in a circle around it, but it's usually not enough. It's good,
Bullshit, it's not enough.
essentially PC building practice to have.
The only reason why you want to use your own thermal grease is if that is old and crusty, and if you are, take this off. Get some alcohol, rub it off.
A little bit extra and layer it on top
Don't need extra.
of the CPU.
Look, is he putting down like 6 of these little dots of thermal compound because there's 6 cores on it?
The final portion is to add this
Man, imagine if he was installing a Threadripper. Jesus.
CPU cooler to the top end of the processor. So you're gonna see that there are
Oh my gosh, see it.
4
Look at this. There's just some putting it, especially when there's already thermal compound on the water block. This is going to make so many bubbles. It's going to overheat.
brackets.
And it's going to smear everywhere. It's going to make a big
Or rather,
mess.
like screws in here with brackets and holders.
This has always been a big contention on YouTube. Everybody has their own opinion about how to put this on. This is obviously wrong.
Right here. And they're going to keep the cooler raised off the processor, but it's also going to be close enough to actually physically come in contact with it. Like basically keep it cool. Take
Yeah, that's why they call it a water cooler, dumb shit.
thumb screws like this and just screw them on.
Yeah, I never used
So
my
now that
thumbs.
we're
I even
turning to
I started with my thumbs on an AIO. Then you have to finish it off with a screwdriver because you have to. In this case, rather than going, rather than wrist tight, you want to go all the way down because it's spring loaded anyway.
We're gonna put all the panels.
But then again, look, it's missing. It's gone. They didn't put they only put the first 3, and they didn't put this one in. So now it's gonna be unbalanced. It's probably gonna be lifted right here. There's going to be a big air gap around this corner of the water block, and it's going to overheat.
Back on, which is the top glass, side glass, front glass, and of course the back panel where...
So he's going to put the whole case back together before he even posts the machine. God. Never do that. Always try to test the machine before you put all the panels back on. Because if it doesn't boot, you'll have to take all those panels back off.
all this fun stuff is happening. So we fully built the PC, everything's put together, and we got to the post screen. So
Did you? So how come you're not showing it to us? That's one of the that's the payoff. When you watch a live build or any PC build on YouTube, the payoff is seeing that post screen and then seeing Windows install as well.
what's next? Well, you need a USB flash drive with your Windows installation media on it, and of course a license key. So I plugged that up.
Yeah, license key, whatever. You can if you're building PCs constantly and testing and swapping hardware, there's no point in actually licensing or was activating Windows, because it'll just balk at you again because you changed your hardware. And here, why is the machine he just built way back here, and he's way over here? It's hard to tell distance from here, but you really have these long cables? This makes me think the machine he's using here isn't this machine. I see everything is hooked up. He even has a little Wi-Fi antenna hooked in, but I don't know.
Installed Windows in a couple of minutes, installed a bunch of drivers, and now
Really only need to install the motherboard drivers and the video card drivers. It's not a bunch. And the motherboard drivers will take care of most of your components anyway. And Windows will probably do most of it for you.
now we have a fully functioning gaming PC ready to run some
I'm surprised it's functioning. I'm sure it'll post, but will it actually run?
games. Right now I've got Armor 3 running at maximum settings, native resolution, which is 1080p HD.
Native? A 1080 can do 4K. There's no native resolution when it comes to the computer. It's native to whatever monitor you have. And you're likely running a 1080p 60Hz monitor, right?
And it's running pretty smoothly. Like, I'm averaging 70 and 80 FPS, and this is normally like a very...
But you can only see, I don't see any tearing.
And it's still doing a pretty good job. So right now I'm playing League of Legends. It's one of my favorite games. I'm actually playing
Pleb.
against a bot, and I'm
I never cared for MOBAs.
distracted, so I'm not actually doing so well. But otherwise, like...
No, you're not doing so well at all. This is likely...
This is
He's not really playing this thing. He's mashing the W key. It looks like over and over again. But what the game is doing is
have really
not...
high frame
It's different.
rates like I am right now. I'm averaging 120 FPS.
Look, he's just mashing the same key over and over again. I've played League of Legends. I've played MOBAs, but come on, you're not. I don't think you're actually playing the game.
Yes, and that's only because I've actually locked the game to that frame rate, because I can get around 300 FPS playing League on maximum
That's because League is designed to run on a potato with a single processor core. Who cares?
settings, which is a little bit absurd, and you don't really need that, so I've locked it. Building a gaming desktop has been a great experience.
Really? You say that now, but you're getting so much shit right now because of this.
Able to max out a lot of my favorite titles, and I'll be able to play a lot.
So Arma and League of Legends are your favorites. Need to open up. See, the thing about
upcoming titles like Battlefield 5 and Cyberpunk 2077 without
which can run on machines much older than mine. I mean, don't kid yourself. The Verge doesn't know fuck all about PCs. They are mainly Mac users. They're journalists, so they're pretty much stuck on using Mac. Overpriced computers.
Without worrying too much about the parts I have. When ray tracing GPUs come out, for example, I'll be able to upgrade without having to buy a completely new system. And if I have a problem down the line, I can always just swap out a part and have it serviced rather than losing my whole computer.
Yeah, but the way you're running that CPU, like this, that CPU is going to die, and it could damage other parts. You're suffocating the power supply because you put it in backwards. Of course, that'll probably just turn off.
And of course now we also have a computer to test and benchmark games here at The Verge.
Oh my god. So any benchmarks The Verge comes up with will be completely inaccurate and skewed because this machine will thermal throttle like a motherfucker. Oh boy. Fuck Capital One. This is the worst PC ever built. I don't think I'm exaggerating. I mean, I've been building PCs for about 30 years, and yeah, I'm an old motherfucker, but this was back in, we had different hardware back then. We had buttloads of hard drives and cables, and yeah, it was pretty a spaghetti mess. But modern PCs like this one, it shouldn't look like this anymore. Of course, back then, you know, back in the 286 days and everything, having a mess of cables inside didn't really matter because they didn't get that hot. You still needed cooling, but they didn't get that hot. But now, I'm sure he regrets making this video. It is really pathetic. Anyway, I will see you later.